Hello, my name is Karel from Scrum Dojo, and I'm a consultant in Agile product development. And for roughly 15 years, I'm helping companies to build products which are both delightful to use for customers and fulfilling for teams to build. People often ask me, Karel, what do companies struggle the most when adopting Scrum? One of the things that I see very often is that then companies underestimate the power of team responsibility, do not fully embrace it, and then struggle with a lot of consequences out of it. But team responsibility, why is it important? It can't work, right? If everybody is responsible, no one is responsible. And yes, if not done right, this might happen and it might look like it doesn't work. So I will be today talking about team responsibility, especially in product development, and explore why should you care in the first place? How does team responsibility look like? Because I had a privilege to work with many teams who did embrace the team responsibility and saw on first sight the tremendous power it might bring if supported right. How to build it, how to embrace it, what can you do to start building team responsibility, because it doesn't happen overnight, and what are the typical obstacles for embracing team responsibility, which are either mental, it can't work, we've tried it, people are lazy, or people need someone to be managed, or organizational, like rewarding systems, performance management, and many other organizational processes that might disrupt the team responsibility. Customers don't know what they want until they see it. This is on a t-shirt with Steve Jobs, so take it for granted. And in order to know what they want until they see it, we need to give them something to their hands they can use in their real-world situations, and only then they can say, this is what we needed, this is what we wanted, or it's not really enough. And the more functionality, the bigger product we give them at the same time, the more we risk that there will be things that they do not like, or they do not need, or they do not work as expected or intended. So let's explore this in an example. Imagine we are in a mid-sized bank which is currently operating on a legacy product, and somebody decided we need a better branch systems to be used by bank advisors to better serve them clients. I will not go into detail, but it will be a new front-end application, new branch system, and it will better show the 360 view of the clients, and the bank advisors can better serve their customers with a wider and more tailored offer of their products. We have a team which will be working on this, and the team consists of a product manager, Peter, who will be responsible for this new whole branch system. There is Bernard, who is the business analyst. We have Frank, who would be functional analyst. Andrew, who is architect. We have two .NET developers, Nick and Nicole, two JavaScript developers, Jim and Jackie. It will be modern-looking application running in browser, and a tester or quality assurance, Quentin. And they would be working together on this new application. Back in the day, when software was built the same as houses, which you might remember being called as waterfall, it went something like this. Peter would talk to all the users, how they currently work with their clients, what are they missing, what do they need, what is not addressed. They would be possibly talking to branch managers who would see the bigger picture of how the branch is operating, and even to regional managers who have even bigger picture over some geographic region. They would collect all the requirements in a large document that would be worked together with Bernard, the business analyst, which lays down all the new processes, all the requested functionalities and everything needed for the new branch systems. Then this huge document will be passed over to functional analyst Frank, who would work the functionality to a greater detail so that we know what to build exactly. He would produce even a huger document, pass it on architect Andrew, who would then create the whole architecture, how the things should work under the hood, how they would be connecting to other bank systems. And then, many months later, the thing would be built by Nick, Nicole, Jim, and Jackie on front-end, back-end, and database. And then the poor Quentin would get the whole product, start testing it, what works and what not. And because 2 years has already passed, he would be finding out not only how many things were misunderstood or forgotten or not asked and so on, but also what happened in the meantime in the 2 years, which is no longer needed and what is missing. So we've all seen this, and in the past 20-25 years, a lot of companies started to experiment with shortening these feedback loops and giving something to users much sooner than that, one functionality at a time, and constantly making sure that whatever is being built is the most useful things for the users and the clients. So this is called Agile Product Development. You may use Scrum as one of the frameworks that will facilitate those short feedback loops. So let's explore what would happen if all these people will start working in this way, but still working the same way as they were used to while building houses before. So let me see how it goes. So the users work with their clients on a daily basis in the bank branch. And regularly they talk to the branch manager, who can then collect all things happening on the branch on a bigger scale, see some patterns. Then he would regularly talk to regional manager, which then can see some patterns happening across his region. And the Peter would be engaging with all of them and start picking the most pressing functionality which should be built at the first. Then he would talk to business analyst, who would then do the analysis of the new small functionality. He would pass it to Frank, the functional analyst. So let's visualize this on a timeline. So there will be a timeline. This is the flow of time, and these are the roles in this new Scrum team. So Bernard would be doing the business analyst for a while. And then he would pass it over to Frank, who would be working on it. But this piece of functionality would be easy to implement, so it would take him shorter time. And even for the architect, it will be quite easy to do, not too much architecture involved. And then we would be working on the back end and front end. And after everything is ready, Quentin may start testing and possibly talking back to the user and collecting any feedback. So as you can see, this feedback loop is probably much shorter than 2 years because we are working on a small functionality, but it can still be quite long. And look that different people are engaged with the functionality at different times. So what would Bernard do in the meantime? He wouldn't be waiting for everything to finish, would he? That would be very inefficient and expensive. So let Bernard work on the next piece of functionality in the meantime, because Peter is engaged with all of them and he has a full list of things to do. In Scrum we call them backlog. So Bernard would start working on a new piece of functionality, which is again quite hard to analyze, and pass it over to Frank. This one would take longer to Frank actually, because there is more intricate details on how it should work, more corner cases. And pass it over to Andrew. And then later on, Nick, Nicole, Jim and Jackie can start working on it. Maybe they can do a better work in parallel. And as you can see, we have some kind of a delays because some roles are waiting for those previous to finish their work. And in the meantime, Bernard will start working on the next functionality. This one would be even easier for his side. But Frank wouldn't start working on it until later on. And then it gets passed over to Andrew. This would be quite simple, but it will be queued for Nick, Nicole, Jim and Jackie to be worked on later on. And look at Quentin. Suddenly he has a lot of work to do here. So this doesn't seem too efficient to me. What do you think? There are delays, there are queues, and if Nick and Nicole would want to ask something about this piece of functionality to Bernard, because there might be some misunderstanding, because little pieces of documents are being handed off, by this time Bernard might be working on something quite different and will be switch context and will be disrupted by these questions. So you may have experienced similar things in your team if people in the team, while trying to work on a small pieces of functionality and engaging users and customers as often as possible, still work in their area of expertise and responsibility individually and locally. They might be working individually efficiently, but the system as a whole wouldn't be very efficient. There would be delays, there would be queues, there would be context switching. All of these do not create any value. And the lower the people are in the food chain, the poorer understanding of the customer needs they are likely to have, because the information passed over to them is more and more concrete, more and more technical, and detached from the actual problem these people at the top are experiencing. The classic waterfall approach, doing things in big batches like building houses, suffers from two problems. One is very, very long feedback loops, and they suffer also from people working in functional silos, being specialized in a single thing. And currently, we have removed the first one. We try to build things one piece at a time and shorten the feedback loop, but we didn't really remove the functional silos because people still work in their original area of expertise and specialization. So let me share with you a story. Long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, in a large bank, coincidentally, many, many years ago, before their agile transformation, I talked to Bernard, and he gave me the business analysis document. It has 96 pages. And I turned on the random page, and what I saw, dear developer, in this Oracle database, find this schema, find this package, and there find this function, which would be around row 453, and swap this piece of code for this piece of code. And I was puzzled. I looked at the title of the document. It was a business analysis document. And then I skimmed through the rest of the pages, and it was basically all the same. And I told Bernard, you wrote the code. Why are you giving it to Word? Why is it in Word document? You should put it to Git, version control it, and release it, because you already wrote it. I'm an analyst. I'm not a programmer. And I said, well, you certainly are a programmer, because what I see is probably working code. We don't know. Word doesn't compile it, but you did a lot of work. And he was looking at me, and I asked him, do you realize that Nick and Nicole, who would be reading this document, have a university degree in computer science, and you technically made them your scribe, rewriting your Word document into Git. And later on, in another galaxy far, far away, in another large bank, who actually was already in the middle of the agile transformation, I was telling this story on a training for Scrum developers, and nobody was laughing. I said, why is nobody laughing? This is a hilarious story. And somebody said, we are still working this way. Like described here, in the middle of a short iteration, Bernard was telling Nick and Nicole how to write their code. So let's start a different way how to approach this. I draw all the people in our team, Bernard, Frank, Andrew, Nick, Nicole, Jim, Jack, and Quentin, and Peter, talking, all of them together with the users, possibly with the branch manager and the regional manager, possibly even sometimes observing them actually working with the clients if possible. So you may say, Karel, what do you mean? Like developers talking to the users? No, possible. Developers can't talk to the users. Well, how many opportunities did they have until now talking to the users? Look at here. Developers are that far from the users. So they do not engage with them very often. Let's see what might be the possible reasons. So likelihood developers will talk to the users is among other influenced by their skill to communicate effectively with the users. If they don't know it, they will likely avoid talking to them. So the skill influences the likelihood. However, if they do not talk to the users, they do not develop the skill. And this is a self-reinforcing loop. If they do not get opportunity to talk to the user, they will not learn it. And if they don't know it, they will be avoiding it, or they will be prevented from talking to them. So question is, what can you do to increase their skill? And what can you do to create opportunities for them to talk to the users? So in this setup, this is built in. We want all the people talk to the users so that they all get the shared understanding on the users and customer needs. I will put it as a sticky here. And this is a key thing which is very hard to achieve in this setup when the information is passed over between roles in different times with delays, in queues, with context switching and so on. So while talking all of us together at the same time, we build a shared understanding much easier. And then, for many people in the team, their work will become more meaningful. And this is when the concept of user story comes from. This is actually people listening to the stories of the users, how things are going on the branch with their clients. Nowadays, user story is just a silly template for a ticket in Jira, but back in the day, it was a useful thing. And while listening to the stories, while building shared understanding, we can actually start thinking together how the functionality should work. And there is a specific technique called specification by example, when we together come up with examples how the application would be used. So for example, the client enters the branch, we invite him to the branch advisor, we ask his name, enter the name to the system, press enter, and we will see his products, his other views and so on. And we can write it down as an example for specific scenarios. And as you can see, this is specification. We are thinking how the functionality might work, but it is also given by examples, so not in generic ways, but what we specifically see. We enter these details, we see this offer, it will look like this. If we accept it, this will what happened next, and so on and so on. So these specifications by example can also be used as test scenarios, because this is basically the same. This is what you enter, this is what you do, this is what you get. And if we manage to automate these tests so they can run with any minute we change the code, they will describe the functionality in a way which is comprehensible to everyone. It will make sure that the code fulfills the functionality. Therefore, it becomes documentation as well. If we write it right and if we manage to document it, so we have still proof that the software works the way it is specified by example. So with a single artifact created collectively by the whole team, we actually covered 3 different artifacts, which in this setup will be 3 different documents, probably written in Word, maybe automated, maybe no. And by approaching the work this way, we also make sure that any code that will be written is only that fulfills the specification, and we will be unlikely to write functionalities which are not needed. It is known as a Yagni principle, you ain't gonna need it. And it will keep the product simple. Yes, we can achieve the same here, but at a bigger cost, and the bigger the delays, the more likely something will be built which is not necessary. And while creating shared understanding and specifying the functionality collectively, and by all the people in the team engaging with the user, understanding their needs, we will start slowly build in them whole product ownership. It is very likely, and it is consistent with my observation with dozens of teams, maybe 100 of teams in different companies, that people in the teams start to see how their individual work, which here is probably more technical, starts contributing to the actual value for the users and for the customer, and will start embracing the whole product ownership. And then happens this magical thing. People are likely to stop identifying themselves with their original t-shirt. I'm a .NET developer, I'm a business analyst, I'm a QA engineer, and will start identifying themselves, I'm a new branch system developer, and I do anything that is necessary for us to succeed. And as you can see here, not everyone is utilized every moment, because things have different effort for different roles in different time for different items. So this is very hard to make sure everybody has something to do. But here, being driven by the value, being driven by addressing the needs, people would start working in other domains, other specializations, and learn new things. And this has been documented 40 years ago when the first Scrum experiment started in Japanese companies. At the end of 70s, at the beginning of 80s. Yes, Scrum is that old. And people engaging with customers on a regular basis and learning new skills is one of the key observations that researchers back then had, and one of the key conditions for this team to be really successful. So, this is one of the key ingredients how to start building the team responsibility. People in the team are no longer responsible for intermediate artifacts of their particular expertise, which they brought from the old world. They are collectively responsible for making users and clients happy, if I put it this way. And by having this close contact, it is more likely they will be more fulfilled by the job, and they will be bringing more of their own creativity to the work, and they will embrace the full ownership of the full product. So I can see the raised eyebrows through your cameras right now, but this is so expensive. 10 people talking to the users. They are not even selling products on the branches. I don't know, 2 hours, 4 hours, the full day. That's a lot of inefficiency. The programmers should code. They are expensive, they should code, right? This is a very common thing I hear when planning events like this. In this example, we have a small team of 10 people. But even if the branch system would be bigger and we would engage 5, 6 teams working together, that might be 50 people talking to the users. We need shared understanding for all of them. I always see managers to calculate their daily rates and multiplying with the sheer number of people how expensive such a meeting is. But nobody calculates, because it's much harder than looking at the calendar for a big chunk of time for many people. Nobody calculates all of these inefficiencies. Because the people talk to each other about their needs, one by one, passing the information, having questions that should have been asked but were not, coming back or making up an answer, producing quite later things that are not the most useful and reworking them, or possibly avoiding reworking them because there is already pressure for other functionalities, and therefore coming up with a suboptimal functionality and product. There are much more inefficiencies hidden here, but they are very hard to calculate because you can't see them in Jira, you can't see them in calendars, because these countless one-to-one meetings explaining things one to another. Having it in a single meeting where everyone can hear everything, ask any question, and get the answer immediately is actually much more efficient. And the functionality build is more likely to be more helpful. And guess what? In the meantime, the people will learn how to talk to the users and customers. We have explored 2 ways how a team can collaborate on building a software product together with the users and customers. One was one functionality at a time, however different people were passing pieces of intermediate artifact to each other, and the other when all the people work together, including the users, and start creating much more stronger shared understanding. I said that this will create a whole product ownership in the people in the team, and it is the first step to embracing the team responsibility. So maybe what is the team responsibility? Let's define it and summarize first. It's a responsibility of a whole team shared across all team members to achieve a common shared goal. So people are no longer responsible each individually for their piece of work, but they are all responsible collectively for finishing the whole work. In our case, building a useful new branch systems that serves better the clients of our fictional bank. And what if everyone is responsible, no one is responsible? This is the typical thing that I hear all the time. So there are some key ingredients that need to be in place so that this doesn't happen. And I've seen it, that if everyone is responsible, no one is responsible many times if some of the key ingredients were not in place. So this is a list of the key ingredients. I will go one item at a time. I just want to say they are not from a book. Actually, they are from a book, but the book is backed by decades of research of actual teams in many, many different contexts by many different researchers. So this is not something made up from the table. This has been proved in teams, not only in product development, but many, many other very different contexts. So one key ingredient is the team does have a shared team goal. Let me emphasize shared. This is actually a definitional thing for a team. What makes a team is a shared goal. Nowadays, we use the word team for any group of people sharing a manager. Therefore, we call these teams real teams. We need to make up an extra adjective to make sure that the team has a shared goal. And the goal should be clear, obviously, and it is very helpful if it's also challenging and consequential. So whatever the people are working is not some mundane work they can do by their left hand, but something they find challenging, and it is consequential, meaning it does help someone, it makes the world a better place or so. And talking to the users all the time reinforces the feedback that people do know that what they are working is consequential. And if it's not, their motivation probably wouldn't be the highest. Second ingredient is that the team does need to have clear boundaries. In product development, this is twofold. One boundary of responsibility is what is the product, what are we building? In Scrum, we call it product definition. We can have a full 1-hour video on what is a product definition and how to create one, but now just for the sake of simplicity, in our case, it would be the branch system for the branch advisors. Having a product definition in a single product company is quite easy. It is much harder in large organizations like banks are, because is the product actually the branch system or is it the current account the client wants to create? But let's not go there for this video. Just accept that having a product definition is one of the boundaries we need for the team. Another boundary is who is actually on the team, and we need to be clear who actually does share the responsibility with us on the shared team goal within the product definition. And what the research shows, that team gel together better if they are small and if they are stable. So small team is up to 10 typically. It limits the number of relationships people have with each other. And why the team should be stable? If you share responsibility with people, everyone needs to know who can they rely on whom, when, under which circumstances. You can't write this down into a job description. You need to learn it on the job, working with the people, seeing who is reliable at what time, and so on and so on. Because you are no longer responsible for your own action. Your manager approves, and if somebody messes up, it's their problem. If anybody messes up, it's the team problem. So the people need to learn how to work with each other, how to resolve conflicts, how to make decisions, and so on and so on. And this comes over time. And let's not make the stable team as a false dichotomy. So there is either changing people every day, or they are stable until the end of the universe and they can't change at all. There is a whole sorts of ranges in between. If the team is too stable for too long, it might become stale. But you don't want to change people every month, because they will be rebuilding the relationships, and the team will not reach their full potential. And especially in product development, what is essential is the team is end-to-end. That means that people in the team can do whatever is necessary for reaching their team goal. If some key knowledge, expertise, specialization, experience is missing in the team, it will be harder for people to accept taking responsibility for the team goal. And again, we can have a full video how to make sure, based on the product definition, how to find the end-to-end team. So these are the clear boundaries. Next step, or next ingredient, is that within the team, and this is especially in the product development, we want to remove the internal boundaries between team roles. So in this case, it might have been a team from the perspective having a shared team goal, but still people were working in their individual areas, passing over their results, not really collaborating that much. Again, not a dichotomy, it's not either or, but not that much, because they were still attached to their roles. Roles come with responsibility, is probably captured in your job description, in your contract with your employer, but we want people to take the responsibility for the whole product, and therefore what they are bringing to the team is not a role, it's a skill. I'm a business analyst. I have the analytical skills and I understand how our branches work. I'm a functional analyst. I know how to turn requirements into screens and functionalities, and I'm a detail-oriented, and I also have some understanding of how our branches works. I'm a .NET developer, and so on. These are my skills, not roles. So we remove roles, and from the responsibility perspective, everyone has the same role, a product developer. And we want to encourage people and give them opportunities to start learning new skills. This is actually what I observe in many such teams, that over time people will learn new things completely outside of their original specialization, because they find the work of the product fulfilling and they start working on whatever is necessary and is interesting for them. So one more ingredient is, regarding skills, support so-called multi-learning. Support people in acquiring new specialization in the organization, so that they can help with whatever is necessary. It takes time, it's not an investment for a few months, it's a long-term investment, but it will pay off tremendously by removing all these delays, queues, and so on. Another ingredient, and this one is not discussed enough in LinkedIn, blogs, videos, and so on, and it is working with the team consistently as a team. So what does it mean? Consistently is the key word. What does it mean? You are a team, you are responsible as a team. this rhetoric, this narrative needs to be there all the time. From the outside, nobody should care about what individual contributed to, did, mess up, and so on. If somebody messes up, from the perspective of the outside, the team messed up. So if I am part of a team, when Frank messed up, but I take the responsibility as well, it will make sure that we sort it out with Frank. If it was in the old world, that was Frank's fault. He messed up. Therefore, I don't know what to code. Yeah. Please make sure Frank does a better job next time. No, we don't want this conversation at all. Dear team, you messed up. And whoever messed up in you, it might not have been Frank. It might have been wrong communication between you and Frank. So sort it out. And this needs to be consistent across the whole thing. Never accept this diving deeper into the team and work with the people with individual responsibilities. This takes consistency, patience, and perseverance. It takes time. People will start embracing the team responsibility over time. Some people, the next day, they just couldn't wait. For some people, it will take weeks, maybe months to start realizing they are a team, they are there for each other, they help each other. And if anybody messes up, then we as a whole team look bad. And if somebody saves us, the whole team looks good as well. So it will reinforce in the people more teamwork, more team collaboration. And the next ingredient, last but not least, last on this paper, is that the team needs to, over time, create some working agreements, how they will work together. It involves, among others, decision making. So the default way the decision making, especially for new teams, is consensual decision making. Nobody takes decision for the team, even within the team. The team decides by itself. Consensual doesn't mean everybody agrees, it means nobody disagrees. Not the same thing. But over time, as the people work together for a longer time, they will start learning on what kind of decision they can rely on which person, and they might not do all the decision making collectively all the time. So at the beginning it will be slower. At the beginning the people need to start work with each other, rely on each other, see how everybody is approaching different discussions and problems, but over time the decision making will get much faster and still be considered team decision making. And this is again a scale. What kind of decisions do you pass as a manager to the team? In product development, the minimum is managing the work towards the shared goal. But over time, you can pass more responsibilities not directly connected to the work on the product. The easiest one is approving vacations. It's like no-brainer. You may move development, personal and professional development on the teams if you support multi-learning. You can move other responsibilities over time to the team, even buying chairs and PCs and licenses for their work. Another would be conflict resolution. So the team needs to find a way and learn how to resolve conflict with each other, because they will be a gelled unit. And the working agreements should be proactive. So not if somebody asks you for help them, that would be reactive. But if you see someone struggling, offer them help. Be more proactive. And people tend to search for harmony and reactive. This is our natural psychology for tens of thousands of years. So making the working agreements more proactive is necessary and helpful. So let me share a story about a team where everyone was responsible, therefore no one was responsible. And it was in a startup years ago, 17 people in a product development, JavaScript engineers, PHP developers, DevOps engineers, and so on. They all shared responsibility for the whole product end-to-end. And there was one responsibility which wasn't completely clear, and a responsibility which wasn't completely embraced by the team. And it was second-level customer support. So the ladies and guys on the customer support were dealing with users and their customers. Something didn't work, so the people ask customer support. Sometimes they can work it out themselves, but sometimes it might have been missing feature, broken feature, bug, unreleased feature, and so on. So they needed some response from the developers. Back then, all the people from the whole company were sitting in a single room. They were literally 5 meters away from each other. And when they approached me, I was their Scrum Master at the time. I was working with them maybe for 2 weeks at this moment. The manager of the customer support came to me, Karel, how does it work? Everybody's responsible, nobody is helping us. And I told her, so if you have a problem, go 5 meters away and ask somebody that you need help. And they did. Somebody had a problem, they went 5 meters, asked for help. And there was 17 programmers and so on. Anyone can respond to Katarina, right? Well, why me? And everybody was like this. And Katarina had no response at all from anyone. So it obviously didn't work. Karel, this doesn't work. Self-organization, it's such a bullshit. It doesn't work. I need one person responsible. And what could be the knee-jerk reaction is, okay, so you will be responsible for customer support, and if Katarina goes to you, it's very clear to everyone. That might be a reaction. I said, no, wait a minute. We want the teams to decide how to deal with this mess. Because obviously, no one responding for your help is a problem. It's not something we want, and it's not something how it should work, actually. So I called a meeting of all the developers and Katarina, who was the head of customer support, and said, so Katarina has this problem. We have a contractual obligation toward our clients within 24 hours to respond to their requests on customer support. It very often involves developers, because we need to know if it's a bug, if it's a planned feature, if it's a misconfiguration, and everything that customer support by themselves cannot solve. So what do we do? How can we reach to some kind of a conclusion or agreement? Because obviously coming over to your part of the room and asking for help doesn't work so far. So after some discussions, the developers came up with the idea. So here on the wall will be a sticky and there will be a name. And that person that day is fully here for you. You come here, you look at the sticky, you come to the guy and he does everything for you, what they can see in your eyes. And how the name got here, none of your issue. This is how we will agree within the team. So they instituted a customer support duty and some kind of mechanism that it would rotate across the people so that everybody has the same amount of this unpopular work. But it worked because nowadays, at that moment, the developer had a clear boundary, clear responsibility, clear rule, clear contract with customer support. There is a name on a sticky. We make sure that the person will be here for you that day doing everything. And if the problem doesn't get solved by the end of the day, that person would be responsible for passing any information to the next one tomorrow. And it worked like a charm. And it was a decision of the teams. It was a contract made with the customer support, and they worked it out somehow, which was within this framework. Okay, Karel, I may hear you say, this all sounds great, but in our company, we have all sorts of obstacles to institute team responsibility. In our company, it wouldn't work. Of course, it doesn't. So maybe let me list a couple of barrier or obstacles which I typically see in organizations. I sorted them into two: mental, like fears, concerns which you might have, and organizational, which are ingrained in your current organizational structure and processes, especially regarding development and rewarding of people. So one typical thing I hear, but our people would never self-organize, they are not proactive, they need to be told what to do. Yes, we have a couple of seniors, of course, but they wouldn't cut it. And this is very typical that managers, first-line managers, team leaders, maybe middle managers have this urge to manage people directly, making sure everybody is doing what they are supposed to, because otherwise they wouldn't work. So they see this lack of proactivity in people, which they see as an obstacle, that if we put them into a team sharing responsibility, this would do nothing. So the lack of proactivity leads to micromanagement. And if somebody is being micromanaged, what is the amount of responsibility for their own actions that the person would feel? Well, not very big. So micromanagement decreases the amount of responsibility felt by a person. And if I do not feel responsibility, how much proactive will I be? Well, not much. So the bigger the responsibility felt, the less of a lack of proactivity. So there would be minus as well. And this is a self-reinforcing loop. So the manager might see somebody being not proactive, therefore managing him, and therefore reinforcing the lack of proactivity. So where did it start? Did it start here or here or here? It doesn't really matter because it goes like avalanche. Nobody knows when it starts. We just see the vicious cycle. However, if you increase autonomy of a person, they might felt bigger responsibility over time. So one obstacle is this self-reinforcing loop, this vicious cycle, and it needs to stop somewhere. These will not grow by themselves as long as there will be micromanagement. So the manager needs to let go for time, give some sorts of autonomy, and wait for the responsibility to grow and therefore the proactivity to grow over time. Because this doesn't happen overnight, then one other obstacle that might come is a lack of the three things I said previously, which is consistency, patience, and perseverance. To reverse this loop into a virtuous cycle, when the micromanagement goes away, the responsibility grows, and the proactivity grows, we need to consistently work with the team as a team. We need to be patient and we need to be persevere. And if we don't see results in a couple of weeks, we may skip those and go back. This is when I see many teams fail with not being patient enough. So, there might be more mental obstacles I often hear, but this is just for a senior people. Well, yes, team full of senior people would probably work better, but junior people grow faster in a team which is self-managed and which share responsibility and work together closely. So this is a myth that only senior people can self-manage and share responsibility. Also, I can hear this is just for extroverted people. Introverts cannot work well in such a team. Well, I have worked with 100 teams across the past 15 years, and I can promise you that not every developer is extrovert, not every analyst, not every tester, not every architect. Different people behave differently. They need to figure out their own way of communication and collaboration. But requiring extroverted seniors is definitely a myth. So, then there is the list of the organizational barriers, and I will again list the top ones. These are typically not those that you deal with the first, but what might get in the way of sharing team responsibility might be the following processes on your HR. It might be performance management if done individually. So in a team sharing responsibility, the performance needs to be managed on a team level, not necessarily on the individual level, because it might create conflicts between the team goal and my own personal goal. It goes hand in hand with the reward system. Again, once the reward system is tied to individual performance, there will be growing conflict between how people behave in a team sharing responsibility and sharing goal. The same goes with the professional and personal development. So even in companies which underwent agile transformation, I see very often that the superior manager of a person in a team is some kind of a chapter lead. There is this structure of chapters. It is inspired by a structure from Spotify, when everybody has a chapter lead who is the functional manager, sort of, who is responsible for professional development in the specific area of expertise. But we want people to grow multiple specializations, and this structure actually conserves and creates a barrier for developing another specializations. Chapters are implemented differently across companies, so don't get attached to the name of the structure, but we want to change the professional development and push it towards the people. Let it be directed by their own preference of growth, but also what kind of skills and expertise is necessary on the product they are working on. And because we want stable team, they would be working on the product for a longer time, and therefore developing a skill necessary for the product will pay off over time. And the last but not least is the career path. So in traditional organization, the career path is typically tied to going even deeper in my area of specialization and becoming a manager and climbing the ladder of hierarchy. In agile organizations, the hierarchy tends to be much lower. There is not much hierarchy in agile organization. We do not have too many managers, so this kind of career path stuff makes sense. But people need some career path, some development. So what we want instead is to build a career path around their specialization and around their contribution. And the key three things that people can contribute is the value of the product. So the more skill I have, the more helpful I am for the product, because I am not causing any delays, I am not bottleneck, I'm not waiting for others, I can do what is necessary. My own personal growth and professional growth, and contributing to the growth of the team overall. So teaching others, mentoring others. If I'm good at something and I'm the only one good at something, I can be the only one doing it and becoming a bottleneck, or I can help others to teach it. I don't need to be their manager, their functional manager, their chapter lead. I just need to spend some time with whoever, with the team or other team, and help them grow. And if you build your reward system, performance management system, professional development and career path around the contributions to the value for customer and to the value of the business and people in the business, then there is a clear career path, and it will reinforce behavior which we want to see, which a closer collaboration with the customers and a closer collaboration with people in the teams. So these are the typical barriers. There are all sorts of others. I just picked up the ones that I see the most. So don't get held back by the obstacles. You may see, there is so many of them, it will never work. Just start. This is not a matter, as you can see, this is not a matter of a methodology or a prescription or a framework. This is a cultural shock. And the benefits will come. You just need to stick with these. So first, try to minimize the micromanagement, increase autonomy, and stick to these three. This is the most important. Don't worry about this. This will come later. This will not be your main obstacles for the first 6 months. And once you start working how team responsibility increases engagement of people, growth of people, fulfillment of people from doing better job for their customers, Once you start working this, you will figure out this by yourself, how to change your performance management, reward system and career paths in order to be consistent with the team responsibility. I've seen it so many times. When I work with a team for more than 6 months, when we are consistent, patient and persevere, people come to me very often. Karel, I don't want to work another way anymore. I want to stay here. Can you make it sure? I don't want to go back to the functional silos. I don't want to go back to these things. This is very fulfilling for me as a consultant and coach to see people being really happy. But it doesn't come overnight. It comes after some time. Once the team starts to gelling together and with the customer and seeing that the increasing level of autonomy and influence over things has some consequences for the customer and your business. Thanks for listening and see you next time.